In the last video, we explored the built-in date in JavaScript, and we saw that while it can get the job done, it's not exactly user-friendly. It's a little bit awkward and clunky. In this video, we're going to explore the de facto way to work with time in JavaScript by using the Moment.js library. Moment gives us very usable methods, allowing us to easily format time in a way that's meaningful for us, or change time, adding on days and seconds, manipulating it as we go. Now, this library we can find on the web. Let's go ahead and pull up the documentation for it. Momentjs.com is where the site lives. And what we're going to do is go over to the docs page, a place we'll be spending a bit of time in the future. And if we scroll down, there are a few different ways we can install it. We're not going to be installing it via Node. We'll be installing it via the browser. And we can actually grab the JavaScript file we need via this website, cdnjs.com. We're going to head over there, and this brings us to a page with just a ton of information. We're going to stick with this version right here, the most recent, that is 2.20.1, and we need to scroll all the way to the bottom of this list. We are not loading in all of these JavaScript files. We're just grabbing one. It's right here. This is the one momentwithlocales.min.js. So this is the URL that we're going to need. I'm going to copy that URL. And then we're going to head over to the browser and actually integrate it into the project. Now, we're going to be using this in both of our application pages. So I'm going to add a script tag over here and another one over here. Let's start with index.html. I'll add it below my other library, a new script tag. We'll set up that source attribute, and in there, I'm going to paste in the URL I just copied. Now I'm going to take this entire line exactly as we have it, copy it, and we're going to paste that over in the other file. So over inside of edit.html, I'm going to add it right here. There are no libraries in this one yet, so I'll add this one up at the top of my scripts list. Perfect. Now we have this library accessible inside of all of our JavaScript files for the Notes app, and we can actually start using it. Once again, what we're going to do in this video is just mess around with the basics of the library, and we won't worry about actually integrating it into our project just yet. Though obviously that is something we're going to get to very shortly. What I want to do is take all of the code we wrote in the last video and cut it out of this file, and I'm just going to move it into a new file. So I'm going to make a new file and paste it in. And we're not going to actually save this. I'm just going to keep it around for this video so we can compare and contrast the two different approaches. Down below, I'm going to switch this from a plain text file over to a JavaScript file. Since I haven't saved it, I don't have a file extension, and Visual Studio Code wasn't sure what was in there. Now it is indeed getting parsed and styled correctly. So what we're going to do is use the thing that the Moment JavaScript file gives us. This is a function called Moment. So right here, once again, we're going to create now. We're going to represent the current point in time, but instead of using the built-in JavaScript date, we're going to be using the Moment.js library's moment. Here, we call moment as a function just like this. And there we go. We now have a representation of the current point in time when the script runs. This is very similar to when we used new date without passing in any arguments. From here, we can go ahead and get a string representation of this moment in time. I'm going to use console.log, and I am going to call now.toString. And what we get back from toString is going to be basically identical to what we got back from toString before. Right here, we see just a string printing with all of the information, including the time zone. Now we're going to figure out how to manipulate the moment, how to manipulate now. I'm going to take this line, copy it, and paste it a couple lines down. And right here, we're going to explore a little manipulation. So let's head up to the docs for Moment.js. The docs are really well done, and there is a whole lot to the library. So it's going to be important to be able to navigate these docs, as there's no way you're going to remember everything. If you want to perform basic getting and setting operations, the get plus set section has all of that information. We have methods from everything down to milliseconds all the way up to years, allowing us to get and set those values. This is very similar to how we were able to get all of the values in the file we used in the last video. Over here, let's start with something simple like minutes. If we go to the minute section, we can see that we have a minute and minutes method. Now, these methods do the exact same thing. It just allows you to better describe what your code does. If you're setting the minute equal to 1, for example, you might use minute as a singular. If you're setting it equal to 5 minutes, you might use minutes, but you can use them interchangeably. So if we call minute with a number, that minute gets set. So we can change the minute for the time. If we call it without a number, we are getting the value. So we call it with a number to manipulate, without to fetch. And as we can see, the same thing is true for hour and every other unit. We're not going to go through all of them, but let's go through at least one. Right here, I'm going to use now.minute. And what I'm going to do is pass in the minute I want to set. Let's say I want to set it equal to 1. Now we can go ahead and save things. In the past, the two strings would have printed the exact same thing. Now we have manipulated the moment in between. And if we head over to the browser, we can see we went from 9:29 to 9:01, which is indeed correct, given that we actually set the minute here. Now, if we didn't want to set the minute and we just wanted to read it, we could comment out this line and we could replace it. Up above, or excuse me, down below, we'll get rid of that two-string call, and I will just call minute the exact same method, but this time I'm not calling it with an argument. Right here, what do we get? We get 29 back, which is correct. The date wasn't manipulated, so the minute up above and the minute down below should be the same, and they are. So this is a basic way we can manipulate our time. Now there is one more set of methods related to manipulation worth talking about. Over in the documentation, what we're looking for are methods that actually allow us to add and subtract relative to where we currently are. So over in the sidebar, whoops, not letting me scroll nicely for some reason, we can see that under the manipulate section, we have methods like add and subtract. These allow us to add an amount of a given unit. For example, we could add 2 years, or I could subtract 5 seconds. And we can see right here that they chain a bunch of them together to perform some sort of manipulation. Let's go ahead and explore this on our own. What I'm going to do is delete these last 2 lines. And right here, before we print the current point in time, I'm just going to perform a little manipulation. So let's use now.add, and I'm going to add on 1 year. Add and subtract both take 2 arguments. The first is the amount, and the second is the unit. So in this case, I can add on 1 year, so 1 here, and then year over here. I could then go ahead and chain on another thing, but let's see if this works first. I'm going to save things. I'm going to view the output over inside of the browser, and what do I get? I get Tuesday, February 26th of 2019. Everything's looking great. Now we could add on another call as well right on here after this one, dot subtract. This is known as chaining. We are chaining on multiple method calls, and a lot of third-party libraries support this, allowing you to simplify your code. Here I could subtract. I'm going to go ahead and subtract, let's say 20, and I'm going to subtract 20 days. So it's currently the 26th. I would expect to see the 6th printing. If I go ahead and run things over here, what do we get? We get Wednesday, February 6th of 2019. So we went up 1 year, we went back 20 days, and the timestamp is indeed correct. Everything's looking real nice. Now, being able to use add and subtract is going to be super useful. We're going to be using that whenever we want to manipulate a given moment. There are other methods now that we're going to explore related to formatting. So we have a point in time and we want to display it in a way that's meaningful to a user. This right here, this is not meaningful to a user. There are other methods that Moment has that allows you to really customize what exactly you show to the user. The one that we're first going to explore is called format. Over inside of the documentation, there is an entire section on this under display. The format method does not require an argument, but I've personally never called it without one. If we do call it without one, we can see what we get. Right here, I call format, I save the file, I check out the console, and I get a date format. This is not very readable, not something I'm actually going to show to a user. What's really cool about format, though, is we can actually pass in a string. When we pass in a string, we get to customize exactly what information shows up where, and we do this via a simple set of patterns. So down below in this table, you can see that there are tokens and there are output. So if I use 2 M's in a row, I get the month with a 0 up front, so a 0 padded month. If I use 3 M's in a row, I get the shorthand for each month, for example, NOV or FEB. If I use 4 M's, I get the full month written out. So by using these patterns, we're going to be able to come up with something that looks really nice. Over inside of the editor, let's go ahead and try to use format to print a date in the following way. So if the month was November, I'd want to see the full month. Then we'll have the day of the month. Let's say 3rd, not just 3. Then we'll add a comma, a space, and then we can add the year into the mix. So let's say the year was 2003. So I want to figure out how I can use format to print a date in this format, and that's going to allow us to really customize the look and feel. To do this, let's first start with month. Right here, I'm going to replace toString with format. We are going to pass in a string, and this is where we can start providing our patterns. So if I want the full month, I have to use 4 uppercase M's. That is the token. Moment is going to replace this pattern with the actual value. Next up, we want a space, so I literally just type out a space character. Then we want the day of the month. Right here, not just 3, but 3rd. If I scroll down, there's a whole section called day of month, and under there we have a few different options. I can get the regular number, I can get the number 0 padded, so a 0 in front of 1 through 9, or I can get what we want, which is the number with first, second, after. Now to get this, we use uppercase D, lowercase o. So all I have to do over here is add that into the pattern. Uppercase D, lowercase o. At this point, we can actually save things and make sure that our app is working well so far. Over inside of the browser, what do I get? I'm getting February 6th, which is awesome. Next up, we want to worry about the year. So the year does indeed have a spot. Right here, we have the day of the year. That's not what we want. If we keep scrolling down, we get the actual year. Here we have a few different ways we can represent the year. We can use 2 Ys to remove the first 2 characters. We can use 4 Ys to get the entire number. And this is exactly what I'm going to do. So over here, what do we want next? We want a comma and a space. So I type in a comma and a space. And then I add in my 4 Ys, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go ahead and save things and check out what I get in the browser. Over in the browser, I have a really nice formatted string, February 6th of 2019. So by using the moment library with its format method, we're going to be able to customize exactly what gets printed, and we're going to be able to do it with little to no effort. Now there is one more way we can format things I want to explore before we move on to the challenge. If we head back to the docs, we can look at this one. This one is indeed under display. After the format documentation, we have time from now. Time from now returns a message like you'd see next to an Instagram post where it would say 2 minutes ago for a comment or something along those lines. When we use from now, it actually runs this calculation. It takes your moment, it figures out exactly how far in the past or in the future, and then it returns the little string. In this case, we've taken our moment and we've manipulated it away from the current moment in time. We added a year and subtracted 20 days. So let's go ahead and see exactly what we get when we use this from now function. Console.log, now.fromNow. I'm going to call it with no arguments, and we're going to see exactly what prints. If I head over to the browser, what do we get? I get in a year. So you can see that it's summarizing the difference between the 2 dates in a way that could be very useful for a user. It's not saying in a year or minus 20 days, because at that point in time, the 20 days isn't particularly important. So Moment is smart enough to know exactly what units matter and what don't. Now, if we were to change this, that value would change. So let's go ahead and subtract 1. And I'm just going to subtract 1 week. If I do that, and save things, we would expect something different to print, and right here we get a month ago. So I subtracted 1 week, and then I subtracted 20 days, and the sum total of that is that I moved back about a month. So we're going to be able to use all these methods and more to not just work with time, but to make it really easy to format time. The last thing to cover is how we can work with our timestamps in Moment. Moment makes it really simple. If we pull up the documentation, right here, we are looking under display for Unix timestamp. Here we can get it in milliseconds or in seconds, although in JavaScript it's common to use milliseconds, and all we have to do is use the value of method. Super simple to use. Let's go ahead and wrap this one up by doing just that. Const. I'm going to call this one now timestamp. I'll set it equal to, and all we're going to do is use now dot value of. This is going to give us some sort of really big number. And we can prove that by printing it. Console.log now timestamp. I'm going to save the file in its current state, head over to the browser, and right here we get a very large positive number since the time we're working with is indeed after 1970. Now we can also take that number and create a moment instance based off of it. So we can once again use methods like format and from now. So let's say we just read this number out of local storage, for example. We can go ahead and call moment, passing in that number right here, passing in now timestamp, and then we can access anything else we might want to access. For example, I could use the toString method. I could use format from now or any other moment method. If we save this, the browser is going to go ahead and refresh, and what do we get? We get the correct data. So we were able to take a moment instance and get the timestamp. Then later on, we were able to use that timestamp to get a moment instance back, so we could take advantage of its super handy methods. So I hope by now that you're starting to see the advantages of using moment over the regular date. Can we get what we want to get done with date done? The answer, yes, but it's going to require us to write a ton more code, and that is just not realistic. It's much better to use a library written by somebody else that already contains the code we need. Now, this video already has gone on a bit longer than I like to have them, but I do want to include a challenge so you get a bit of real-world experience before we integrate it into the project. I'm going to comment out all the lines we just added, and down below I am going to paste in 3 steps for you to complete. What I want you to do is make a new moment representing the current point in time. Then I want you to use the various setter methods to set the month, day, and year to the correct values for your birthday. So you want to set all 3 of those. Then what you're going to do is format using the format method. And I want you to print it in the following way. Here I have January, I have Jan, the shorthand for the month. I have 6th as opposed to 6th. Then I have my comma space, and I have my 4-digit year. So take some time to go through all of those steps. When you're done, come back and click play. Make sure to print the format output so you can actually verify your work. All right, pause the video. How'd that one go? Let's go ahead and knock this one out. Const birthday equals, I'm going to make a moment at the current point in time. Then I'm going to set various values. There are 3 things we want to set: the month, the day, and the year. Now, if you remember, the methods that you should have used for that are under get plus set. There is one for each. We have the month down below. Then we have the day of the month up above, date of month. And then finally, we have the year. For the year, we simply use year or years. For the month, we use month or months. For the day of the month, we use date or dates. So let's go ahead and knock that out right here. Birthday dot year. I'm going to set it equal to my year, 1991. Then right here, I can use birthday dot month to set the month. I was born on the 1st month. And you'll notice now that what we have is a couple of method calls back to back. We can chain these together like we saw above to simplify things. So I'm actually going to add the month call right here. So we set the year, we set the month, and now we're going to set the day using date right here, 6. So this is step 2. The last thing to do is to print it using console.log. We're going to use the format method available on our moment instance, birthday.format. And we're going to pass in a pattern so we can get it to show up exactly as we had it here. We want those few pieces of information. They're all documented down below. I got to scroll way down to get to it. Under display, we have format. Under format, we have each. So first up, the month, we use 3 M's for that shorthand. Then the day of the month, we just use D to get the day of the month as we want it. And we already know how to do the year. It's 5 uppercase Y's. So over here, we can knock this out. We have our 3 M's, space. We have our day of the month, comma, space. We have our year, 4 uppercase Y's. If I go ahead and save things in their current state, I should see my birthday printing February 6th, 1991. That's not quite correct. I forgot that months are 0 indexed. I always forget that. If I save things now, we do get the correct information. January 6th, 1991 printing. So there we have it. Moment's going to make it easy to work with time, and that's great because we're going to start integrating it into our application next. I'm excited to get to it, so stay tuned, and I'll see you then.